I've come to the sad realization that the truth is that no one is going to come and help. You are on your own. And I realize that for myself as well, personally. When it comes to the challenge that is occurring around what's gone on in the pandemic, nobody is going to come and help. Everybody has taken their stance already. They're either silent, they're challenging it, or they are already vocal. And if they are, they have already suffered the consequences of speaking out. One of the most important points, though, lies with this principle of the furin cleavage site. And I'm going to explain it a little bit just so that you grasp the basic concepts. But I'm going to make a call to those who are listening. When I realize that your loved ones, your family, your friends, who may be suffering at the moment, and some of you may be suffering with health issues related to the pandemic, there seems to be a general silence across the board and somewhat of a disinterest in the issues that need to be addressed. And what that means is that there are unlikely to be any easy solutions. What we're going to need are community healers, people who have an interest in health, who can communicate well, and are willing to learn. If you are one of those, just write the word interested in the comments. If you're live, do it after the live, and I'll be able to send you a link as I think about how to build a community of healers. Because there are so many people who are already sick and so many more who will get sick as this virus continues to circulate. So it's with great sadness that I recently did this post here, and this is on my Substack. So please, if you're interested, look in the link below. This molecular switch, this furin cleavage site, and to help you to understand it, it's like a key that opens the doors to a multitude of cells. It's a simple little piece on the virus, but the implications of it are so huge that nobody wants to talk about it. So, firstly, understand what it is. And I've got here a paper that they did the work of demonstrating the importance of this furin cleavage site. So, they took the furin cleavage site off the virus and they tested it in mice at the time. And this is all the way from January of 2021. So that means that they were doing this in 2020. And what they found, it was essentially that the mutant variant with the altered furin cleavage site doesn't transmit very well. And so what it indicates is that fundamentally there would be no pandemic without this little furin cleavage site. So you may be thinking, or you've heard about it. What exactly is that? So you have to look at the spike protein, and this is from the same paper. And this image here is giving you an idea as to what this furin cleavage site is. So this is the whole spike protein. And then this little piece here is the furin cleavage site. This is it blown up. Okay. Now, this is not present on any other human coronavirus. It's on some other animal coronaviruses, but this was a huge jump. And to understand how significant that jump is, you have to realize that a few years ago, I did a presentation, and I'll just show you here. This is from one of our colleagues, Professor Bala Ambati, and in the Substack link is the link to this presentation. So this guy was just doing research, doing a blast sequence, trying to figure out, why was this virus going around, and he found something that blew his mind. And at the time, it was so significant that he sat on the information for about 8 or 9 months. He had no idea what to do with it. Um, and because of that situation, he then eventually put together a group of people who put a paper together where, and this is the paper that they did, and I know some of the authors. This is why I got a chance to talk to him about this furin-cleavage site, MSH3 homology, and potential recombination linked to the SARS-CoV-2 furin-cleavage site. So they did this whole paper talking about that because they recognized how unusual this 12 nucleotide fluorine-cleavage site is. And in effect, in the paper, they highlighted that the chance of it occurring randomly, because this is what you're being told, um, as they said, recombination in an intermediate host is an unlikely explanation. They said the chances of this occurring randomly was like 1 trillion to 1. So no wonder that the paper didn't get as much traction as it should. Um, but this furin cleavage site, and just so that you see it again in case you've missed it, this tiny little area here, it's just 12 nucleoside sequences. This is it here. TC, CTC, CGG, CGG, GCA, CGT. And this codes for specific proteins. And this tiny little thing is able to make this virus so much more transmissible. So here is the reason why, because it helps to split the S1 and the S2 subunit. Kind of, it's right at the junction and it helps to separate them so that it makes entry more easy into a cell. And the simple analogy to think of what that furin cleavage site is like a Swiss Army knife. So if you imagine having a Swiss Army knife that is closed and you need to open it to take out the scissors or the knife, it has a little groove in it that you can put your nail in and pull it open. The furin cleavage site is like that groove. Without it, it's not impossible, but it's really difficult to pull out the scissors or the wine opener or the knife. It's very difficult. But with the groove, you can suddenly just flick it out. And that is what the furin cleavage site does. It makes it so much more efficient for the virus to enter the cell. When I was doing the assessment of different viruses, looking at different viruses, asking, well, what happens if other viruses get this furin cleavage site? Measles is already very contagious, so this would just be enormous. RSV as well would have been really, really significantly augmented. But the fascinating one was influenza. Influenza, if put it this way, if you put a furin cleavage site on an influenza virus, it would become so pathogenic that it would kill everybody before they could spread it. So, what you need is for it to be highly transmissible, mild early on, and capable of reinfecting repeatedly. That is the perfect virus to cause problems. And this is where we are. So, one of the realities is that COVID at the moment is not going to stop circulating in highly vaccinated regions because this cohort can't control the mucosal immunity to be able to prevent infection effectively. And so we have a very serious problem ahead of us where this virus, that because of the furin cleavage site, it gives it access to multiple other cells. So once it gets into the bloodstream, it can infect a whole variety of cells. It is it to show you what it does. I'm going to try and see if I can get this a bit bigger, hopefully. Because of that, not only can it infect the upper airway, but it allows extensive infection in the gut, blood vessels, brain, kidneys. This is what makes the damage so very serious. And Well, you may ask, well, why is it such a big deal to figure out where it came from? The problem at the moment is that it's not being taken seriously enough, in my view, by the scientific community. They think that just because people are not in intensive care, it's no big deal. But as I've shown recently, mortality is still up. It is still killing people at a rate that is significantly worse than we could have imagined. What do we do? And so this is where we are now, that we have this huge crisis on our hand. Now, it was raised to a certain degree when the Republicans were challenging this in the United States. They raised the point about the origin. And I got here the rebuttal from the Democrats. So this is purely political now. This is not about science. So here you have the coronavirus pandemic Democrats select subcommittee saying that EcoHealth Alliance did not cause the COVID-19 pandemic, but did engage in questionable professional conduct. Now, you have to understand the backstory to this. So, as I said, this virus has some capabilities that are like unbelievable. So, here is a paper that was done by the Drastic Group. And again, they weren't appreciated because they were challenging the origin. And they put together this paper. And in it, they highlighted EcoHealth Alliance, they highlighted the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, and they highlighted a date, the 27th of March 2018. And they highlighted that there was a proposal in great detail talking about experiments which could have directly resulted in the SARS-CoV-2 virus that emerged in Wuhan in the fall of 2019. They were The particular concern included the introduction of human proteolytic cleavage sites into SARS coronaviruses. That's the furin-cleavage site. They expressed interest in identifying viral strains which could exploit the DC sign pathway. This is to enter immune cells. Introduction of key RBD receptor binding domain residues to increase the affinity. As well, they were looking at how to boost suppression of interferon responses. This is like the perfect description of what we have got. This was, remember, 27th of March 2018. Now, the reason that the Democrats got involved in this is because they mentioned again this EcoHealth Alliance. They did not cause it. So under the summary here, they were raising the fact that the Republican-led sub-select committee was trying to blame the origin, and so this is now all politics. And so they were arguing about the grants from NIAID and the National Institute of Health, looking at the funding to the EcoHealth Alliance, and they did their probe and they decided from their analysis that EcoHealth Alliance, even though that information was there, they did not cause this because they didn't get the funding for it. What that effectively saying is this. Now, just think about this a minute. I'll just go back to the citation. This was proposed to the US. DARPA rejected the proposal. Okay? They went with 5 other groups for their initiative. Why would you think it not possible that they went elsewhere to get funding to do exactly the same thing? Because they planned it, they thought about it. This was supposed to be gain of function work to see what would happen if a virus like that was formed. That's the argument. And I don't know if it was accidental, I don't know if it was deliberate, I don't know. But the reality is, when you think about this from a practical point of view, and For me, this is like watching Law and Order. I've had an interest in watching Law and Order recently, and it would be the equivalent of someone saying, "Yep, they planned to do this action, but they didn't get the money for it, so they didn't do it. But the same plan that they had occurred with the same person. They said they didn't do it. Their fingerprint was there." And you go, okay, that makes sense. They said they didn't do it. I'm sorry, that's just naive. And so where we are now is an awful situation. This is now politics. Politics will not acknowledge this. The implications and the liability is too big. So nobody is going to acknowledge this. And so what it means, you're in this on your own. Nobody's coming to help you, because to come to help you, they'd have to acknowledge there's a problem. They are not going to acknowledge there's a problem. And so therefore, nobody can come to help you, because you can only mitigate something if it's serious enough to warrant investigation and mitigation. If it's not anything that warrants it, there is no help coming. This is why we need a community. And I thought about it, got the inspiration today. So if you are interested, write interested in the comments after the live, and I will then send you a link as I try to figure out how to build this. What we need are people who are interested in people, who want to help, who want to protect. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a nurse. You could be a cleaner. You could work on the streets. As long as you can understand the foundations of science and you can take a good history, that means that talk to people compassionately, get information out of them, help to understand what it is that's going on, you should be able to help. But we need a revolution at this moment. Because right now, the more you look at this, the worse it appears. And the reality is that if there has not been interest before, the interest is not going to be coming in the near future. We've got to find a way forward. And I don't think that there's going to be an easy solution, because what we're dealing with here is one of the most complex viruses that we have ever seen. I want to remind you what was planned. At the end, this is the last point I'll make. Think about this. Here is what they wanted to do. They wanted to create a virus that was able, because of introduction of proteolytic cleavage sites like the furin-cleavage sites, that it would make something like a SARS-like coronavirus far more effective at transmitting. So they also wanted to identify or create ways that they could exploit the DC sign pathway. This is a receptor that is on immune cells. And so they were looking for how you could get this virus to also infect immune cells. They wanted to make it far more bindingly affinity to ACE2. That would mean, in my view, that you would have more risk of autoimmune responses. And critically, they wanted to improve the ability of the virus to suppress interferon responses, which would mean your immune system would be delayed at responding and stopping the infection and increase, therefore, transmissibility. This is like the prototype of the perfect pandemic virus. It's just coincidental that they described this in 2018 and the pandemic happened in 2019. It is purely coincidental. Remember that. Remember, you have been told that. Don't worry about anything else. The glove does not fit. If you understand that, you'll know what I'm talking about. And so, therefore, this is where we are. We are dealing with one of the most dangerous viruses out there because of the fact that it is so transmissible and it is able to circulate through the population quietly, doing horrendous damage. We need answers. And at the moment, the only people who may be able to find them is you. So let's join together. Let's find a way to make a movement. Let's educate each other. Let's find solutions for people because we need answers. And only us will seem as though we're going to find a way forward. Have a great evening.